Hey guys, my name is Batumio, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the anti-tank mine and the M2 Slam from Battlefield 4. I think many of you are probably like me, and you don't know how much damage each of these do. You don't know the pros and cons of both of them and why you would want to use one over the other, and so I kind of took it upon myself to discover the differences and how much damage they do against each of the vehicles. And so to get things started, we're going to take a look at the main battle tank, or a heavily armored tank, and the mine itself, the anti-tank mine, is going to do 50 damage per explosive. So it's only going to require you 2 of these bad boys down on the ground to completely destroy a tank. The M2 Slam, on the other hand, is only going to do 35 damage in explosive, so it's going to require 3 of these on the ground to take one of them out. But where things get a little interesting is when we take a look at the light armor tanks such as the LAV. One anti-tank mine against a LAV is only going to do 47 damage per explosive, requiring 3 anti-tank mines to drop one of them. As for the Slam, it is once again going to do 35 damage per explosive, requiring you 3, but from my logical mind, this doesn't make sense. Like, I don't understand how this functions. Like, I would have assumed that the heavily armored vehicle, the main battle tanks, would fare better against a anti-tank mine with that extra armor compared to the LAV, but that's not the case. Like, if you want to drop a LAV in this game, you have to have down 3 slams or 3 anti-tank mines. As for the Jeeps in the game, the light Jeeps, such as the ATV, 1 mine is going to kill it outright, and then 1 slam is going to do 71% of its health, so it's going to require 2 slams on the ground to take out one of them. But as for the heavily armored Jeep, 1 mine is going to do 58 damage, requiring 2 to drop it, and then the slam is going to do 47 damage per explosive, requiring 3. So now I wanted to go back and talk about that dynamic between the heavily armored tanks and the light armored tanks, because as I said, it just didn't make sense to me. And when I was testing these numbers, I was like, am I doing something wrong? Like, the heavily armored tank, I assumed, would take less damage. And so I tested it a bunch of different ways, and I'm assuming you guys would be like, hey, did you run over it certain ways? And so yeah, I ran over it backwards, I ran over it slowly, I went really quickly, and every single time I was in a main battle tank, it did 50% of its health. And I did the same thing for the LAV, and once again, it did 47 damage per explosive. And so this is just how the game is designed. Like, that's just how the anti-tank mine works. And so when you try to incorporate this knowledge into your gameplay, basically what it means is that if you're playing on a map that has both a heavily armored and a light armored tank on it, if you want to take out every single vehicle that rolls over it, you need to have 3 mines or 3 slams on the ground in one area, one trap, if you want to destroy a vehicle that rolls by. If you assume that a tank is going to roll over it and you only place down 2 mines, and an LAV does, you're only going to get a disable. Like, it's going to get really close to death, and they may jump out, they may freak out, but for the most part, it's just going to be an engineer on in there. You may delay them for a couple of seconds as they repair their vehicle, but then they're going to be on their way using a vehicle that normally would have been destroyed if you played it correctly, but now they're using it to just destroy your team. That being said, though, there were some moments when I was able to take advantage of not getting the flat out destroy, and one of those situations is what you guys are going to see right now. A LAV is driving on by, it explodes, the mines explode, the 2 people in there freak out, it was clear that it scared the crap out of them, and they just ran away. They ran away from the vehicle. I'm assuming they thought that maybe there was like 5 engineers in the rocks and they were about to just fire a bunch of rockets down upon them in a couple of seconds, leading to a very fiery death, and so they ran away. But since it was just me in there, I was able to kind of waltz on over and steal an LAV for my team. And so when that happens, that's great. But usually, I'm not going to be around the mines when they explode. I'm going to be off in the distance capturing an objective for my team. I'm going to be around my squad, kind of supporting them. And if I'm way out there and a mine blows up and I don't get the destroy, then I've only really delayed the inevitable, and that's not really what I'm looking for. So now with that kind of all out of the way, I wanted to take a closer look at the differences between the M2 Slam and the Mine, because we already know that the Mine does more damage. Like, that is very clear, but why would you want to use the M2 Slam over the Mine if it does have a reduced damage model? Well, the first thing being is that you can toss these farther. The downside of a Mine is that you have to go out from cover, you have to go out in the middle of the street, plop this thing down, leaving yourself exposed. The M2 Slam, on the other hand, acts more like C4. It's a little bit lighter, and so you can have some throwing distance to it. And so if you're in a building like I am right now, or you're on the side of a building and you see a tank about to roll on in and you don't want to go out in the middle of the street to kind of place down a mine, you can toss out 3 of these slams from the window, and if they drive over it, you're going to get the destroy. Another nice thing is that they stick to vehicles, and so you can kind of use them like C4, where if you're using a rocket slam combo, put 2 of these on the backside of an enemy tank, really any enemy tank, fire an RPG, which does about 50 damage, I think, to a heavily armored tank, and you're gonna destroy them instantly. And so that's another nice feature of it. But other than that, like, those are the differences between the 2 gadgets. And so I would recommend using the M2 Slam on maps where you know that there's going to be a lot of light armored vehicles, such as on Flood Zone or Hanan Resort. On those maps, it's going to give you a little bit more versatility. You don't have to go out in the open as often. You can kind of toss these outside of windows, and it's going to give you a little bit more survivability and a little bit more options. But on larger maps, such as on Gold Mud Railways, I would say using the anti-tank mines and a rocket combination is your best bet, especially when you're using the anti-tank specialization for the engineer class. I probably should have mentioned this, but if you are using the anti-tank specialization and you get to the 3rd tier, this allows you to place down 6 anti-tank mines down at any given moment. And so you can have 3 traps with 2 mines in there, and so on Gold Mud Railways, where basically all you're fighting is main battle tanks and there's only usually a couple of light armored vehicles, you're gonna get the most bang for your buck when you use the mines. You do need to know, though, that when you are using the anti-tank specialization, if you haven't achieved the 3rd tier unlock, even though you get 6 anti-tank mines in your inventory, you can only place down 3 at any given moment. And so you really need to fight with your team. You need to really work with your squad mates, because if you're playing on Gold Mud Railways, I mean, sure, you can place down 1 trap with 2 mines, but then you're just left with 1 mine all by itself, not really doing a whole lot. And so if you're able to activate that 3rd tier, now all of a sudden you can place down 6 mines, giving you 3 different traps. And if you're also using that in combination with a rocket like the RPG, all of a sudden you become a tank killing god. Like, it is amazing. And so make sure you get to that 3rd tier, because if you don't, it's just not as effective. But yeah, that is about it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed and found this information to be useful, and so that you can now use this information to your advantage on the battlefield, which is what we're all about. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.